Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. 3 days from now, the Jimbo Fisher era will officially come to a close. The final remnants of a regime filled with underachievement plays its last game. The Aggies are 7-5. We want to find out, can Elijah Robinson get them to 8-5 as he departs for Syracuse? Can this shadow of a team with all the departures and defections and transfers, can they get a win over Oklahoma State? Let's discuss. And for the last time this year, roll the intro.
Going to throw here to Parker at the 20, at the 15, at the 10, 5. He is almost. He got a touchdown! He got
left center field. It could be. It is a home run.
Oh, doctor!
Howdy, welcome to the AggieCentral podcast. This is the final game preview of the year, and the Aggies coming to this game a fraction of the team to play the Big 12 runner-up. A team that lost by double digits to Texas, and besides Texas, they also lost to South Alabama, 33-7, Iowa State, UCF, a team that just got handled by Georgia Tech, 30-17. Now, they've had their own defections as well, totaling 8, something A&M's very, very familiar with, which leads us to the bulk of the point of needing to review this game. Most of this hinges on who will A&M field. What players will play for A&M? On paper, I believe firmly, if we field the best team that we can, we should win, of course, right? We talk about the paper all the time, but who cares? This is a great game to point out why that doesn't matter. Motivation will play a big factor in this game. Who's ready to play? Who wants it more? And where's your mindset right now? Okay, so let's talk about who is still with the team and who's probably going to play. That's where this conversation is going to revolve around in large part. And we'll talk about the schemes for offensive defense. We'll talk about how to exploit what they can do and what we might try and do against them. But first and foremost, who is going to suit up for A&M? Long story short, I don't know. We can project a few of these. Some of these are not so hard. Others, I don't know. So let's start most obvious position. QB, Jalen Henderson should be taking the helm. Max Johnson is going to transfer. He's going to go over to UNC. He's going to play for the Tar Heels. And he's going to take his brother with him, Jake Johnson, tight end, starting for most of the season. Now, we did a lot with both these positions throughout. We started with Connor, moved to Max, now we're Jalen. Okay, Jalen looks serviceable. Not worried too much there. So he should be getting the start. Maybe if he's unable to go, we're going to have like a Blake Bose kind of situation, a Marcel Reed. Who knows? Who knows exactly what we're going to see? Hopefully he'll be able to play the full game, establish himself as a solid backup next year for Connor. Something we'll definitely need is this team's been consistently injury prone at the position. Running back. I see no reason to think that it's not going to be by committee in large part. Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens. Who else is going to play? I think this is probably going to lean heavily towards Ruben Owens. He is my breakout player of the game, right up front. I think this guy should show some flash in this game. I think he should break out. I think it's going to give way to him and Moss in large part. I think it's time to move on past Amari. We may see some Bailey, as we did against LSU, especially in short yardage situations. That's who I think. That's where I think we're at. Wide receiver. Ainias Smith's going to move on to the NFL. He is, I don't think, likely to play in this game. E-Rob has said that whoever wants to play in the game can play in the game. But as it all points to, I think he's getting ready for the Senior Bowl. I think he's getting ready for the Combine, Pro Day, all those good things. Give his draft stock as much benefit as he possibly can. And that's fine. Love to have him suited back up for Aggies one more time, but he's given us so much. And look, time to pass the torch. Should be him. Not him. Moose, meaning him. Should be Moose, I believe, taking his spot. Ja'Day Walker Noah Thomas should be our starting three. If we're going to see anybody else, probably Tease, right? Seen him just a little bit here and there. I think between the other three, we should be pretty much good to go. Of course, tight end, basically our fourth receiver, kind of going to flash between Max Wright and I'm expecting Jaden Platt. Garza's gone, so maybe we're looking at I don't know. I don't know if we've even seen much of anybody else at this point. I'm hoping we're going to run quite a bit of two tight end set, so I think we're going to see both of them a lot. From left to right on the offensive line, I don't see any reason why you're not going to basically have some sort of combination of these five guys. Trey Zune at left tackle, either Dewberry or Naboo at left guard, Foster at center, Dewberry, Naboo at right guard. I don't think Layden's going to be going. Last I heard, he was injured. Last I heard, him and a few others were injured. And so are we going to see him? Maybe, maybe not. And then at right tackle, looks like it's going to be Crown over. I'd love to have Fathery, circa 2021, something like that, but it just hasn't materialized right now. And so, in large part, going to have the same offense we had when we played LSU. Not a bad thing to happen, especially with 3 more weeks worth of practice to get Jalen comfortable and see what else he can do. Calling plays. Petrino has slid over to Arkansas, right? So he won't be there calling plays any longer. It looks like James Coley's going to be the guy. Assistant OC looks to take the reins. He should be able to do everything that Petrino was able to do. He's well-versed in calling plays as well. So I don't see a whole lot of fall-off going on there. What I'm more interested to talk about when it comes to this kind of situation is whether or not we're going to kind of call the same old, or if we're going to start coming out of our shell. I thought at some point we're going to start coming out of our shell, and it just didn't happen. So the team probably is what the team's going to be. Now, before we talk about how we might go about calling this game, from a schematic standpoint, from a matchup standpoint, I'll wait and get to what Oklahoma State wants to do as defense, right? And then we'll go from there. So right now, let's just flip right on over to defense. We got a lot of guys that have left on that side of the ball, probably even more so than the offensive side, right? So defensive side, we've lost Dix, we've lost LT Overton, Chappelle, Rakes recently entered. Forgot to mention, of course, this has been big on the radar, but I guess I've kind of casted it out of my mind. I don't even want to deal with it to some degree. Kind of feel betrayed to a degree. Yes, Nolan has committed to Ole Miss, but I was neglectful in mentioning that Evan Stewart is in the portal as well. It is what it is. So he hasn't been much of a factor this year. He's been great at times. He's shown some flash, got some plays, but honestly, not a big contributor. Chappelle, Nolan have been more significant contributors on the defensive side. They're moving on. Okay, Harmon's also moving on. So what is his defense going to look like? It's really difficult to tell. From the back end, moving to the front 7 is where I'm going to go. Damani, I haven't seen anything that's going to indicate to me that he's not going to be playing. Bryce Anderson should be there. He's reaffirmed his commitment to stay, which is something new that the players are doing. So they're like, let's run it back. And I'm like, yeah, great, hit it. Let's run it back. Go. Let's get it. But Chappelle's going to move on. That one kind of hurts. I really thought this guy had a lot of talent, and I thought he was a good fix. But it seems like he's just not loving football right now. Maybe want to get a fresh start, something like that. Deuce Harmon, I couldn't say. But we're going to have to get into two corners here. Now, we saw Rodgers play some time at cornerback throughout the year, somewhat significantly against LSU. I'm kind of wondering whether or not DeBerry is going to get back on the field at the corner spot. And this might come as some major pushback for people because I know we've got a type of way of feeling about this guy from what we've seen. But I don't think it's going to be possibly as bad as we would think. The matchup situation here, without getting in too deep just yet, is probably more favorable than it has been against other teams. Although there's still some concern there, and we'll get to that. From the linebacking standpoint, Cooper snubbed Butkus Award winner, and just held out of that for no good reason. But I believe he ended up making first team All American, rightfully so. I don't know, maybe it was second team or something, but either way, guy's projected to be like a first rounder. I can't say whether or not this guy is for sure going to not play, but every indication looks like he's going to be preparing for the NFL. So, what does that look like? It looks like probably York for sure, Russell, maybe a Samford kind of situation, or a little bit more of a flex into another nickel or dime kind of situation. Particularly because Oklahoma State just loves to throw the ball. And the type of throwing that they like to do in more in particular, because they are a running team. Again, get to more of that in a second. But that's where I see the back half going. Up front is the big toss-up. No Nolan, right? No Diggs. Who's going to replace these guys? Consummate starters, of course. Even like Rakes, who's played significant time, not as necessarily a starter, but somebody like him, is going to be kind of a real difficult replacement, just from a depth standpoint. But it's still there. So of course we're going to have guys like probably Scylla coming off the edge at some level, and he projects to play a little bit better against a team like this, whereas he would have only been more of a third down type of guy in the SEC with his little bit more slender frame. But if, right next to him, or even on the outside, or him backing him up, I'm not sure what Durkin's going to want to do. I do think he's probably still calling the plays here. But you've got Shamar Turner, right? You've still got Shamar Stewart. You've still got a big body in Regis. And so, all these guys look to still be there. McKinley Jackson, big question mark there. Will he play? Will he not? He's definitely going to the NFL. So he's probably going to be preparing. I don't expect him to be there. I expect him to be doing his other thing, making room for everyone else to get their minutes in. So that might look like somebody like DJ Hicks getting more time. Maybe a Ryland Kennedy on the edge on the other side. Some things like that are probably more likely. But I think between Regis, Shamar Stewart, Scylla, I don't know. Maybe we're going to see some Samu. This is really a hard projection. We've had a lot of movement here. We've had a lot of guys play time here, and I don't know where we are with guys like Dindy. I don't know where we are with guys like Anaya White right now. So it's very difficult to project who this should be at this time. But we won't know. I mean, look, the major takeaway here is we're just not going to know until the first kickoff. Until we take the field, there's no way to know. But of course, Shamar Turner's going to be there. Stewart's going to be there. Regis is going to be there. Scylla will play. That Hicks will play. All these things, they'll happen. But what's going to be the consistent lineup? Who knows? We will have to wait and see. The only turnaround I've seen from a return standpoint is possibly on the offensive side. There's been some speculation at some point that Nolan would come back. Maybe Stewart would come back. But now that we've kind of established who's all gone on both sides of the ball, it looks like the only one that's going to return or has returned, I think, is Basantis. Maybe he wants to make his way into a guard situation, right? So I didn't mention him in the five for rotation purposes. Now, he played mostly right tackle this last year, with Crown overseeing significant minutes as well. We had a rotation kind of situation going on there. But maybe at this point we want to get him into the guard situation. He seemed like he had some issues having movement, but regardless, having him back, as talented as he is, and maybe being a little bit in over his head this first year, we'd like to see him with a little bit more growth and see what he can do next year. So will he play this week? Certainly he's going to be on the standby if he's even available. But yeah, glad to have that guy back. So let's talk about what we can do on the offensive side, what we can do on the defensive side based off of what Oklahoma State's going to offer. They're going to bring quite a bit. And first thing I want to do is just kind of point out the two main players here. I mean, I guess there's three, but as far as the quarterback for Oklahoma State goes in Bowen, um, not a whole lot to talk about here. I mean, if I'm going to spend my time and not waste yours, where I want to spend my time is with Ollie Gordon, is with Owens on the outside. Bowen, he knows how to run the Oklahoma State style offense, and he's going to do that. He's going to toss it up from time to time. They're going to try and take some shots. They like to throw the ball, but they are no stranger to running it. And Ollie Gordon is a strong runner. He looks like a veteran from the get-go. He's very good in protection and just patient runner, toting the rock, hard physical runner. This guy definitely is somebody. I mean, he's probably what makes their offense tick. Owens is the guy that is the one that we hope a team like this doesn't have. He's the big guy. He's the outside. He's the deep threat. He's the one where we're talking about with who are you going to put somebody like, for instance, DeBerry on, or even if we still had Harmon, who's also had issues with the 50-50. What are we going to do about these guys? Okay, well, I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy like that Tennessee had and Alabama had that gave us fits with all the deep balls. And this is the guy, if there's going to be somebody to do it, it's probably going to be him. They have an Ananias type in Presley, kind of a smaller, more scatty slot type of guy. But Owens is the guy that if they're going to make big plays, it's going to be with him. If it's going to be downfield, it's going to be with Owens most likely. So he's not as big as some of the others, but he has the potential to do that. Can DeBerry play on him? Probably more of the same, y'all. So it's an interesting matchup issue for us. Now, what they like to do here is they run the RPO. They run it hard. It's a pull and it's a throw, and it depends on what you're giving them. If you're giving them cushion, I mean, it's a pull and it's a quick slant. They'll take what you're going to give them. That's 100%. They will throw in an extra blocker. They will hold the running back to give them time. So anytime they do something like that, it's when they're typically going to throw it down the field. They have some issues at left tackle. We can definitely try and exploit something there with them on offense. How that's going to take place is going to be something interesting to watch. Most anybody from our experience this year are no fan of the 3-down lineman situation. Is Durkin just going to ramp that up this time, finally playing like a full-blown, kind of RPO run and gun kind of situation? He very may likely do that, and particularly because we're down defensive linemen at this point. We've lost so many that it might make more sense to just go the 3-man front and rotate those in the entire time, and kind of use the DB situation and linebackers to do the additional hybrid of run coverage versus drop back. So see what he wants to do there. But this team is definitely a team that's going to take what you give them. If I had to characterize what they do, I would say that's the identity of their offense. They'll take what you give them. So if they run up on you and they're in the gun and you're gonna play back, you're gonna play 2 deep safeties, they're probably going to hit you with a slant to the inside because that's where you typically draw the most space. If you're going to play up on them press, then they're probably going to do some type of RPO. They're going to read you, or they're going to hold that extra blocker, and then they're going to try and throw it deep and make you defend the 50-50. It's not a terribly complicated scheme in that regard, but they will move guys around. They will try and get you off balance. It's not so much about about matchup as it is about determining what it is that you're going to give them, and then they'll go from there. They'll put it all out there based off of that. The 4-man front for us is an interesting prospect. They don't give up a ton of sacks. Why? Well, they throw the ball so quickly. They don't run a lot of long developing routes. If they do exactly what I've said that they do. They typically hold back the extra blockers. They'll throw in, again, kind of a tight end type, but maybe two running backs and something from there, and they they will push it in that way. Okay, so what they just really want to do is they just want to take what you're going to give them and see if they can break something off. Okay, so um, what you decide to do will more or less dictate what they want to do. And so what we're going to have to essentially do is, if we're going to run the four-man front, we need to get pressure that way. I don't think we're going to get a lot from blitzing. If we're going to do something like that, it just needs to be kind of a mix and match. They throw the ball so quickly most of the time, it's hard for a blitz to get home. So I don't expect to see almost any sacks unless our front can do it. So it's an interesting thought whether or not we're going to balance a three-man versus a four-man front, trying to match up with these guys. If we do the four-man front, we should be able to outclass them talent-wise, and do some stunting, maybe get them off balance and get off the edge against their left tackle. Maybe somebody like Silla, Turner, even some pressure up the middle with Regis or Hicks, Shamar Stewart. All these are interesting prospects. And if those guys can get home, I think this gets to be a really, really difficult game for Oklahoma State. They're not used to giving up a lot of pressure in that way. But to do that, you've got to play up on them. You've got to play press at the line. You need to be a little bit physical and reroute them, or just kind of delay their timing. Don't give them the space that they want. But you have to do that at the risk of them trying to send one deep on you. Damani has not been the best at coverage himself. So what to do? If you were Durkin, what would you do? If I was Durkin, it is definitely 6 one way, half a dozen the other. I think what I'd like to see most is I'd like to see a four-man front, and I'd like to see them work. Put your two linebackers out there, York, Russell, whoever it's going to be. Let them do the reading. At this point, they've proven that they're pretty good at being gap sound. I think that bodes well for us to cover them, because the way Ollie Gordon works is he likes to hit it up the middle and then bounce it outside. They like to create a little bit of an advantage with the defenses they play. So I mean, here's what they get in large part, right? They get a 3-down line in front, and they're going to do this exact same thing, and then they're going to have 3 linebackers. And one thing, for instance, Oklahoma is not good at, which a lot of the Big 12 teams, end up being something that offers them that they benefit off of, is that when you have those 3 linebackers, which is just not as typical these days, is you got to be gap sound. As soon as you get one guy out of his gap, you've got a hole. He doesn't need much either. Our guys are pretty gap sound with 4 big guys, strong guys, physical guys up front. Hopefully, still a Jimbo term, enforcing their will, we could really have some success up front. Okay, but I don't think we're as well equipped to play the sort of 3 linebacker situation with a 3-man front, because the angles take such and make such a big deal to be able to get to the runner. And at that time, whenever you're moving, say, a little bit more full speed, and you're relying on a linebacker or a DB type to make those tackles against somebody like Ollie Gordon, it is just not a good combination. He's not an easy tackle. He's not a big guy, but you don't bring this guy down that easily. And so coming with at a top speed kind of situation, and hitting him with sort of an edge arm tackle kind of thing, it's just not going to work well. So I like for the linebackers to kind of sit back just a little bit, but just only having the 2 and really letting our 4-man guys work. Okay, so I'm not seeing a lot of blitzing going on this game, and I think that's probably for the best. So if we can play some quality man defense on the edges, we can generate some sacks through coverage. But we're going to have to let let that be that. We're going to definitely have to rely on some passes being batted down. We're going to have to make some quick decisions on that. Because if we play up and we do play press, they're still going to try and get the ball in there. They've got to do something. They're not always going to be in the most ideal situation. If we're playing more cushion, we're going to have to break well. And that's, I mean, their offense is dangerous, not to be underestimated, but you really just need to kind of play sound. You need to know where your assignment's going to be, and you need to be kind of, ready to be physical. If you can be more physical than them, which is usually the story, but against a team that, we should be able to out physical quite a bit easier than the normal team, that seems like the game plan to me. Now, defensively, they're not a big team, and they're going to play a 3 down front a lot. They're going to play the 3-backer kind of situation a lot. What they get themselves into a lot of time is somewhat a severe mismatch on an edge. They're going to bring a DB up, and a lot of times, especially if you get them into a tempo situation, and you've just had them with say 6 DBs, and then you switch to a heavy scheme, and we would do this with our tight ends, right? Flanking them out to the edge or out wide, and then bringing them back in. They will end up with a DB on an end, and it's the funniest thing you've ever seen because it is just a severe mismatch. That's just kind of to illustrate what the defensive situation should be. And what I'm going to end up recommending is my point. If I get to be the armchair quarterback this one last time, then here's what I would kind of go with based off of these kinds of things. And I'll get to that in just a second, but I just want to kind of illustrate kind of what's going on. They will definitely run that 3 lineman front. And we can exploit it in a bunch of different ways. A lot of RPO will do us a lot of good. This is something that they use against their opponents a lot of times, right? So they use that RPO. And they can sell the run, which sells the linebackers, and it gets them moving downhill. They get out of the gap where they need to be, and it opens up just these holes, these massive holes that you can hit 20, 30 yards. But that's one way. The other way you can exploit them is they're going to give a lot of cushion. Now, we're kind of an offense that just does what we do, and we don't sort of typically take what we're given, but we really need to do that on this one. There's 2 options in my view, and that is take what they give you, run the quick slants, run the quick comebacks, do the pop and drops, run the quick slants, do all those things, but hit them with the RPO, take what they give you. They're going to give you the 3-man front. That's fine. So you either take what they give you, or in my opinion, something I think would just be the epitome of the game that we can play that will mismatch them the most, and that is to run basically 2 tight ends the entire game. Flank them out if you want, bring them in if you want, put them on both sides if you want, pull them, do however you want. But when we get those big guys in there, I don't think they can match it. Okay? More than that. Again, I love armchair quarterbacking this, y'all. I mean, this is just so fun. This is one of the reasons why I do this, because I get to feel like I can make it work or whatever. And I know I get it. It's all academic, and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But either way, it's fun to speculate. And I think what I'd like to see the most is that 2 tight end for the entire game, because do they think they have the defensive line depth to hold that down for the entire game? I mean, this is a team that's built to beat, the 5 wideouts, right? I mean, to beat the Texas Techs, who have been playing against, teams for so long. I mean, Gundy's been around for a long, long time, so he's played against Leach, right? I mean, look what, you build a team to play against what Sark's doing. You build a team to play, against, Oklahoma, TCU, Baylor, all these teams that are extremely heavy pass defenses, that are not prepared to run in defensive linemen back and forth, rotate them in all the way through the fourth quarter to keep pace against a just huge and big offensive line. I don't know what else to say other than to say this to me seems like the most obvious thing to do. And if not that, just take what they give you. But I really would like to see, I think a lot of us been wondering the last few games, where has Noah Thomas been? Are we going to target this guy? I think this is the time you do it. I think this is where we see him have a little bit more success on the offensive side of things. Finally get back to maybe the first 2 or 3 games when we thought we were going to see a lot more downfield action with one-on-one matchups that we just haven't had. But we should be able to really be physical with this team and really force them to play close to the ball, which would then open up the backside. But of course, we need a lot of time. We have been forced to throw so quick this year, and we're going to need the protection, which is, again, comes into the 2 tight end front. We had the option to let them go, had the option to hold them back. It's going to keep them guessing in large part. And I think it's just a great, great way to exploit a team that's quite a bit smaller and quite a bit less depth on the defensive line. So, in addition to that, their linebackers are a bit undersized as well. I'll talk to you about the mismatch that you can get from that. And I just don't see them running a 4-man front. And if they do, I don't know how they're going to hold up with that all game long. Okay. Just think if we put on a 10 or 12 play drive, a couple times, that is just going to be not good for them. Thankfully, though, they're not a huge blitzing team, so we don't factor in to see a whole lot of that coming our way. But, desperate times call for desperate measures. Bowl games are bowl games. And a lot of this has to do with, what are we going to scheme up? What are we going to do in regards to trick plays and in regards to, putting in some new installations and things like that? Maybe they're going to. Maybe they've studied our film and they're going to try and take it that way. But a lot of times at this time of year, you are what you are. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go off and do a whole lot of switching, mixing everything up. But we'll see. We'll see. What I think is going to happen is this, y'all. I think we got enough on the field in this game to make it happen. I think we've got enough to make it happen. I think we can make this an 8-5 year. I think it's going to be close, though. And I'm thinking something along the lines of like a 27-24, 30-27 kind of situation. Maybe a score late for them, and then us trying to hold. That's the way I see this rolling out, okay? But maybe we're going to try and come into our own a little bit and have, say Jalen rolling out a little bit more, which is a very interesting prospect. Having him run a bit more against this type of team. If we could do something like that, we could find some wrinkles that, Oklahoma State's not really well prepared to defend, and we can exploit those the whole game. We could see this get somewhere where we're, real comfortable towards the end of the game. But I don't see us running away with this, and I see it being pretty close. I think we're just a 2-point favorite at this point. So that's my prediction. I think we're going to come away with this one maybe by the skin of our teeth, kind of a 30-27 kind of situation, and hopefully get our, I believe, 4th win against the Big 12 since leaving. Okay, only one loss. So let's definitely keep that going. The only thing I'll tell you this, the only thing I am just dead certain on is that the Elko error comes full force as soon as this game is over. I like what I've seen so far. I'd like to talk about that a lot more, maybe in another time. But right now, all I know for sure is that when this game is over, it's the Elko error 100%. So let's get it. See you back here when this game is over. Talk about it one final time, and then we'll move on into the off season. So, Gig 'em. We'll talk to you then.